Thanks for always finishing your lunch. Huh? I haven't been eating it. What? I've been throwing it away. I couldn't believe my ears. I get up early every morning to prepare his lunch, and it turns out he's been throwing it away. Why would you do that? It's my lunch. I can do what I want, right? I was heartbroken seeing my husband laugh as he said that. I lost faith in him as a person, and I decided to get back at him. I'll show him that I'm not always a submissive wife. Please marry me. Yes. 1 year after we started dating, I married my husband. We met at work. He was at the head office, and I was in the sales department. While we were dating, he always put me first, taking me to my favorite places and letting me eat my favorite foods. Every day, I felt happy thinking about the wonderful life that awaited us. But after we got married, his attitude changed drastically. He began to nitpick everything I did and made all the decisions himself. He became a controlling husband, and things gradually got worse. Recently, something truly unforgivable happened. Huh? What did you just say? I told you to start making lunch every day from tomorrow. Why? It's normal for a wife to make her husband's lunch, right? 3 years into our marriage, my husband suddenly insisted on this. I work too, and I'm busy in the mornings. Honestly, I don't want to take on more than I have to. We used to eat lunch separately, so why the sudden change? I was puzzled. I don't want meal preps. I want freshly made ones every morning. From that day on, I started getting up at 5 a.m. to make his lunch. Cooking was never my strong suit, and even simple tasks like making scrambled eggs took considerable time. Preparing all the side dishes for lunch in the morning was quite a challenge. This new routine left me with less sleep, and it was extremely tough. One night, seeing the empty lunchbox in the sink, I felt relieved, thinking, oh, he ate it all. From then on, I continued making his lunch every day, though he never expressed any feedback. Out of curiosity, I asked him one day, by the way, is there anything specific you want in your lunch? No, not really. I see. I thought you liked it since you always finish it. Ha! I haven't been eating it. What? I've been throwing it away. I couldn't believe my ears. I was baffled as to why he would throw away the lunch I got up early every morning to make. Why would you do that? Well, your cooking is bland. It doesn't make me want to eat. But I get up early and put a lot of effort into making it. Then make something that makes me want to eat. But you don't have to throw it away. You made it for me. I can do whatever I want with it. I was stunned. Why would he have me make lunch in the first place? When I asked him, he nonchalantly responded, because it's fun. He made me make lunch just so he could throw it away. I never thought he would do such a thing. I was so heartbroken that I cried myself to sleep that night and didn't make his lunch the next day. My husband got furious. I saw no point in preparing his lunch knowing he wouldn't eat it. But if I snapped back, I knew he would throw a temper. So I decided to fix his lunch again starting the next day, even though it was going to be thrown away anyway. Feeling more and more hollow each day as I made his lunch, I gradually began to prepare fewer items. You've been slacking off recently, haven't you? Do you think I wouldn't notice? I'm sorry, but if you're not going to eat it, it's the variety of food that makes me feel refreshed when I throw it away. Don't you get it? I don't understand at all. Due to my lack of sleep every day, I was so exhausted that I started making mistakes at work. That's when I heard a troubling rumor. Apparently, my husband had been bad-mouthing me. When I asked a colleague who had been on a business trip to our headquarters for details, he said my husband was calling me a useless wife and saying things like, she can't do anything without me. She has no will of her own. It was bad enough to know he was saying these things behind my back, but hearing it confirmed, I couldn't just sit back and take it. Over the weekend, I decided to confirm the truth and asked a close friend who works at the headquarters. Mickey, I've heard it too. Really? Yeah, your husband is pretty harsh on women. I don't know if it's because he's good at his job, but he seems to think women should only be assigned to make photocopies or something. No way, he wasn't like that before we got married. Did you do something? It's the other way around. I'm the one being treated poorly. How's he treating you? I explained to Mickey about him throwing away my lunch. As she listened, she became visibly angry, wrapping me in a tight hug as tears welled in her eyes. You've been so patient. I can't imagine how tough it must have been. Why are you crying, Mickey? I'm crying for you, you fool. But this is unacceptable. He needs to learn his lesson. That's true. He's really wronged you. Have you thought about getting a divorce? I'm worried about finances right now. You can handle that. I'm more worried about you. You're numb to the pain even after being mistreated like that. That's a sign you're not okay. It's not like I'm numb. I'm pissed. Then Mickey gave me a serious look. Do you want to get a divorce? In truth, the idea of divorce had been lingering in my mind. Thankfully, we didn't have any children. I found myself contemplating whether I should continue enduring life with my abusive husband indefinitely. To weigh my options, I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. I gazed directly into Mickey's eyes and said, "There's something I want to try. Will you help me?" "Of course." "Thank you. I want to use your position." You see, Mickey is actually the granddaughter of our chairman. Moreover, she's currently working as an executive assistant at the headquarters. I can't overlook the opportunity to enlist such a powerful ally. That's quite an idea. I see where you're going with this. I'm starting to look forward to it. If this goes well, I can make my husband feel ashamed of himself. The following Monday, as usual, I handed my husband his lunch. "Do you have time tonight?" "What's this about all of a sudden?" "You know Mickey, my friend who works as an executive assistant." "Yeah, what about her?" "Mickey says she'd really like to invite us to dinner. Apparently, the chairman will also be there." "The chairman? He wants to show appreciation for his hard-working employees. If it's a request from the chairman, I can't refuse." "All right." I thought he would be suspicious, but surprisingly, he agreed quite easily. Perhaps he was pleased with the thought of being invited by the chairman. With that, everything fell into place. After work, I met up with my husband and confirmed once again that he had thrown away his lunch. Then we went to the restaurant specified by Mickey for dinner with the chairman. My husband seemed pleased with the fancy place and began to boast about his competence. Today, I finished my work early and helped my colleagues. You know, being reliable is hard work when you're this good at your job. Is that so? The chairman's granddaughter is beautiful and she's an executive assistant, so I bet she's good at her job too. I'm just doing my job like everyone else. You don't need to be so humble. You're far different from my wife. He got on my nerves a bit, but the chairman moved on to the main topic. You get a packed lunch from your wife every day, don't you? Yes, she does work hard on that. What a wonderful thing, a lovingly prepared lunch from your wife. But it's the same thing every day. I'd like something extravagant once in a while. That's not something you should expect from your wife. Really, don't you, as a chairman, get extravagant lunches? I prefer something simple. It's an everyday thing, after all. Oh, you're just joking. You've even arranged for us to eat in such a wonderful place today. My husband's attitude was completely different from usual. He must have been trying to put on a good show in front of the chairman. I watched nervously, unsure of how it would unfold. So, you don't cook? The chairman asked. Cook? No, that's women's work. I don't think that's the case nowadays. I think it's normal for men to work outside the home and for women to take care of the home. We both work, but ideally I'd like my wife to stay at home. Really? Men are breadwinners and women are homemakers. That's how it's supposed to be. That's a rather old-fashioned way of thinking. Really? I think all men in the world would think the same way. Despite the increase in women's participation in society, they end up taking maternity leave or quitting their job. In the end, it's men who run society, and it's the same in our company as well. Don't you agree, Mr. Chairman? That was the first time I heard such a thing, but he should know that we can't live on his income alone. He was spouting derogatory comments about women, but the chairman avoided addressing them and continued the conversation. What do you think of men who cook? He asked. They're feminine. I've heard it's becoming more common, but I don't understand it. What if I told you that I enjoy cooking? Would you think I'm feminine? Ha! And what if I told you that I, not your wife, made today's lunch? What would you do? You're kidding, right? You could feel the chairman's anger seeping through his words, and it's understandable because his handmade lunch was thrown away. Hey, what's this about? What do you mean? What you said yourself. You didn't eat your lunch today, right? The plan that Mickey and I hatched involved getting some help from the chairman, who had recently taken up cooking as a hobby. Yesterday, the chairman had kindly given us some of his homemade dishes, which I repackaged and handed over to my husband this morning. You set me up. It was far different from what I usually cook. Anyone could tell at a glance. My husband, who must have thrown it away without checking, was momentarily at a loss for words. Watching this, Mickey spoke up. Aren't you more concerned about the terrible things you're doing? What terrible things? It's strange to throw away food every day without even eating it. That's right, it's the worst to just throw away something someone else has made for you without any appreciation. Well, if I had known it was made by you, sir, I wouldn't have thrown it away. My husband was trying to hastily backtrack, looking pale at the chairman's words. So you wouldn't throw away the lunch I make, but it's okay for you to throw away the ones prepared by your wife? Well, she's no good of a wife. Can a husband do whatever he wants? That was my last straw. You are really the worst. What are you on about all of a sudden? Don't you realize how much your actions are hurting me? Huh? Why are you getting so worked up? I can't stand it anymore. I want a divorce. My husband stood looking perplexed. He glanced around the room, realizing he had no one to back him up, and began to panic. What are you talking about? How can you just say something like that out of the blue? It's not out of the blue. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Where did the kind man I married go? I was in love with you then. I don't love who you are now. As I conveyed my feelings, tears began to spill. I took out the divorce papers that I had put in my bag and placed them on the table. All you need to do is sign. I filled in the rest. You're serious. If this looks like a joke to you, you're more helpless than I thought. Do you think you can survive after a divorce? I'll be fine. I'll be getting alimony from you after all. What? Watching this scene, the chairman began to speak. You seem to have some prejudices against women. That's not what I mean. I've heard from my granddaughter about your attitude towards our female employees. Coupled with this incident, this isn't something I can overlook as a chairman. What are you talking about? I'll let my son, the president, know about this. Wait, sir, I can't lose my job now. Before worrying about your job, there are other things you should do first. Taken aback by the chairman's angry voice, my husband was at a loss for words. Not once have you apologized. When you do something wrong, you apologize. Even a kid in elementary school knows that. I'm very sorry. Not to me, to your wife. Can't you even understand that? You're making me sick. Mickey, let's go. Sure, Linda, let's go. Huh? What are you waiting for? You're not going back home, right? You're coming with us. Seeing the desperate look on my husband's face, Mickey and I left the restaurant, feeling quite relieved. The next day at work, I got a call from Mickey. Your ex-husband got demoted. Demoted? When HR investigated his work behavior, there were complaints from female employees, one after another. Is that so? And apparently his performance in sales has plummeted. He deserves it. It seems that he was transferred to a sales branch in the countryside, where the women were quite formidable. At first, he seemed to resist and continued his tyrannical behavior, but the place was filled with tough women, like old-school matriarchs. Within a week, he was unable to talk back. Now he is so respectful of the women in the office that he even voluntarily makes copies. 2 weeks later, Mickey contacted me again. I was issued a notice of termination and was told that I would be transferred to work at the head office in a secretary position. What does this mean? I think this is the chairman's doing. It seems that the chairman took a liking to me after seeing my declaration the other day. So, he spoke with the president to allow me to work as a trainee secretary with Mickey. Oh, and there's a message from Grandpa. What? He said we're going to have a dinner party once a month, where you'll eat his homemade food. This is an order coming from him as a chairman. What? The chairman's gonna cook for me? He apparently wants to treat you. He even mentioned taking cooking classes. Later, the divorce was finalized successfully. I was able to receive my desired amount of alimony, which was $20,000. I lost a husband but gained a new friend. I'm happy. From now on, I plan to have my chairman teach me how to cook delicious meals for myself. My name is Avery. I'm a 62-year-old housewife. 2 years ago, my husband, who I had been married to for many years, passed away suddenly due to an illness. Now, I live a modest life, managing the inheritance he left me. I have 2 sons, both of whom are married. When my eldest son, Henry, got married, he and his wife offered to live with me. I told them, I appreciate your concern, but I'm still fit and fine on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you newlyweds. But Henry insisted, I can't bear the thought of you being alone. As the eldest son, it's my responsibility to take care of you. Please don't worry about being a nuisance. And so, we ended up living together. Henry's wife, Rhea, is very young, 9 years younger than Henry, only 23. At first, I worried if such a young girl could handle being a wife, but she was the one Henry chose. I found no reason to object to their marriage, so I accepted it. When we decided to live together, I asked Henry, "Is Rhea okay with living with me? Won't a young girl like her dislike living with an old woman like me?" Henry reassured me, saying, "It's fine. Rhea is kind. She'll get along with you. Besides, having you around will help us with the housework." He was adamant about us living together. I couldn't find a reason to object after hearing that. Sure, I'm getting on in years, and it's too late to start worrying when something happens. Thinking that it'd be more reassuring than living alone, I gratefully accepted Henry's proposal. After we had been living together for a while, there was a time when I asked Rhea, "Sorry to ask, but could you bring in the laundry? I'm going out to get groceries for dinner." Up until then, I hadn't often asked her for anything, but that day I had unavoidable errands to run before shopping, so I decided to ask her. However, Rhea retorted, "Why do I have to do it? I'm busy right now. You should bring it in before you go, shouldn't you?" She seemed occupied playing a game on her smartphone. Even before that, she hadn't helped with any household chores, but I chose not to say anything out of consideration. However, seeing her just lying there playing her game that day, I said a bit more firmly, "If it's just a game, you can play it later, right? Could you please help out a bit?" Rhea, looking annoyed, grumbled, "You're always nagging. Whoever's free should do the chores, right? You could bring it in before shopping. You're really annoying." With a glare at me, she went to the balcony to bring in the laundry. I was taken aback by her rudeness, but I thought it wouldn't do any good to say anything more and upset her further, so I left the house as it was. After that day, Rhea began to harass me. Ignoring me became a daily occurrence. When she didn't like the food I cooked, she would say to Henry, "I can't eat this. Hey, let's go out and eat, just the two of us." And they would go out to eat, leaving me behind. Henry did try to consider my feelings, saying, "Think about Mom too. She went through all this trouble to cook." But when Rhea was in a bad mood, all he could do was say, "Sorry, Mom. We're going to eat out today," and follow Rhea's orders. Rhea never did any housework, no matter how much I asked. Instead, she said, "You're not working, right? Aren't you ashamed to rely on Henry for everything at your age? It's normal for you to do the chores, isn't it?" She acted as if it was completely natural for me to do all the housework. Rhea accused me of not working, but she wasn't working either. She felt superior because she was supporting Henry, who was working. I hadn't told Rhea, but I wasn't unemployed. I had a little income from managing the apartment my husband left me. I also contributed to the household expenses, so I wasn't completely dependent on Henry. But Rhea seemed to think that because I wasn't working outside the home, I didn't have any income, and Henry was footing all the bills. Once, when I was cleaning, Rhea shouted at me, "Can't you clean a little quieter? That's noisy." I was just vacuuming normally, but Rhea was on a phone call and was complaining about me to the person on the other end, saying, "Hello, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Henry's mom. She's really noisy, isn't she? She should be able to do the housework quietly at this point." Even I was annoyed, and I told Henry about what had happened that day when he came home from work. "You know, I'm not saying you have to do everything, but Rhea hasn't been helping at all with the housework. Not only that, but I got scolded just for vacuuming. It's normal to share chores, and I do my part, but I can't handle doing everything alone, especially when I get complaints," I told him. Henry replied, "I'm sorry, I really am. I don't think Rhea means any harm. Maybe she was just in a bad mood today. I'll tell her to help out a bit more, so please cut her some slack today." But he didn't really take the matter seriously. Even so, I hoped that Henry would talk to Rhea, and I decided to watch how things unfolded without saying anything more. Half a year passed, and Rhea's attitude remained unchanged. She didn't even bother to pretend to help with the housework. I was utterly exhausted from managing all the chores for 3 people and constantly trying to accommodate Rhea. During this time, my second son, Lucas, happened to mention, "Mom, your birthday's coming up, right? Since Henry and Rhea will likely celebrate it on the day itself, why don't we celebrate it today? Renly also has a present for you, so let's go out for dinner." I accepted the invitation gladly. Lucas and his wife lived in an apartment about 30 minutes away from our house, so we didn't get to see each other often. Renly, Lucas's wife, was always kind and gentle, showing me a lot of care. When Lucas invited me, I replied without hesitation, "I'd love to, of course I'll go." That evening, after preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I joined Lucas and his family for dinner. They had reserved my favorite restaurant and surprised me with flowers and a gift bag for my birthday. It was a delightful evening, and I couldn't contain my happiness, saying, "Ah, this is so refreshing. It's been a long time since I've felt this happy." Moved by my words, Lucas asked, "Has something been bothering you with Henry? When you say it's been a while since you felt happy, it concerns me. Have things been tough for you lately?" Although I hadn't planned to complain, I explained that I was managing all the housework because Rhea wouldn't help, and how I had been scolded for being noisy and spoken to harshly. Lucas, exchanging glances with Renly, spoke up, "Mom, you don't have to endure this if it's difficult. You have income from the stocks and apartment rents Dad left behind, right? You're only staying with them because Henry wanted it that way. But if Rhea treats you badly and Henry doesn't support you, you shouldn't have to live like this. If it's hard for you to say it, I'll intervene." Renly added, "If you feel lonely living alone, we can live together. I love you very much, so please don't hesitate." Their words moved me deeply, and I felt tears welling up. I expressed my gratitude and decided to persevere a little longer, reassured by their support. "Thank you, but I'll keep trying. They're my precious family after all. I truly want to find harmony with Rhea," I replied. Returning home that night, I noticed the dishes they had used were still in the sink. With a sigh, I began to clean up but stopped myself, thinking, I always do this. It's only fair they do it tomorrow morning. So, I left the dishes as they were and retired to bed. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Rhea came into the kitchen. While cooking, I greeted her, "Good morning, Rhea. I'll handle breakfast. Could you please wash the dishes from yesterday?" Rhea ignored my request and instead settled on the couch, engrossed in her smartphone. Frustration bubbled up within me at her dismissive attitude, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. "It's basic courtesy to clean up after yourself." In her usual manner, Rhea retorted, "I've told you countless times, isn't that your job, mom-in-law? You know the saying, he who does not work, neither shall he eat. You eat every day, so you should do the housework." Henry hurried into the room upon hearing our exchange, looking concerned. "What's going on so early in the morning? Are you two arguing?" he asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. With a sigh, I explained to Henry, "I simply asked Rhea to wash the dishes from yesterday. I was just stating the obvious." Upon hearing my reply, Henry muttered, "Seriously, this early?" and headed to wash his face, clearly irritated. But I couldn't hold back any longer and snapped, "It's not just about this morning. Every single day, I'm the one doing all the housework. Everything, including yours. Do you realize how exhausting that is? At the very least, you could wash your own dishes." My outburst, rare for me, startled Henry. "I'm sorry, I'll take care of it," he said hastily, moving to start on the dishes. However, Rhea interjected, "Why should Henry, who works outside, have to do that? You depend on Henry, so it's your responsibility, mom-in-law." She stopped Henry's hands, clearly dissatisfied with the idea of him doing chores. Then she turned to me and said, "You're living off a pension like a pauper, causing trouble. Get out of this apartment." That was the last straw for me. "Why should I leave my own home? This house is in my name," I retorted to Rhea. Turning to Henry, I confessed my true feelings. "Rhea seems to have it all wrong, but you understand, Henry. It's you two who should leave. I can't bear living together anymore. I've reached my limit." Rhea looked visibly surprised and asked, "What do you mean? How can a jobless mother-in-law own a house? Aren't you relying on Henry?" I clarified, "I am the landlord of this apartment. I don't rent. This apartment belongs to me. When Henry's father passed away, he left me stocks, apartments, and land. I manage these assets and generate enough income to support myself. I've never depended on Henry financially. Even after we started living together, I covered most of the utilities and food expenses." Rhea was speechless, turning to Henry for confirmation. "So we've been living without spending much money?" she queried. Henry simply nodded in response. I chimed in, "While Henry may have wanted to provide for you, Rhea, he couldn't possibly manage all aspects of my financial life, taking you out to eat, shopping, and such. Henry himself isn't earning that much yet." At that moment, Rhea seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Her demeanor changed, her face paling as she said, "I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't realize, and I've been disrespectful. Please forgive me." Realizing that her comfortable living arrangement could be at risk if we parted ways, Rhea continued to apologize repeatedly in a flustered manner. Understanding their realization, I reassured them, "I'm not saying I will forgive you. We're family after all, but continuing to live together isn't feasible. We need to address this. You both should find a place to rent and live on your own." Henry reacted urgently to my suggestion. "I worry about you, Mom. From now on, Rhea and I will pitch in with the housework. I just don't want you to be alone." However, I reassured him, "I'll be fine. If you're that concerned, I can stay with Lucas and his family. They offered when we went out for dinner recently, knowing I might be uneasy about living alone. Initially, I wanted to give it more time living with you two, but now I see it's not feasible. It might inconvenience Lucas, but I'll be closer to them." Henry seemed to grasp my resolve, simply saying, "I understand," without further comment. In contrast, Rhea retorted, "So you're abandoning us even though we've been taking care of you?" Her tone blamed me. Recognizing arguing would be fruitless, I chose not to respond. Within a month, Henry and Rhea secured a new place and moved out. Given their budget, they could only afford an older, smaller apartment. Rhea, who had never worked previously, reportedly took up a part-time job to make ends meet. Henry confided that Rhea frequently complained about managing household chores in her job. Their life seemed fraught with continuous arguments, and Henry appeared utterly exhausted. Henry continued to reach out, pleading, "If only you would forgive us, we want to live together again." Yet I had firmly decided not to revisit that chapter of my life. After Henry and Rhea moved out, I relocated to Lucas's home. Despite my insistence that they needed to accommodate me, Lucas expressed, "Having you here really helps, Mom. Renly also wants you to stay. She's eager to learn your cooking." Thus, we made the decision to live together. Since then, Lucas and Renly have assured me, "Feel free to speak up if something bothers you. We'll manage chores together, ensuring we don't inconvenience each other." Nowadays, I spend my time cooking alongside Renly, pursuing my hobbies, and simply enjoying a fulfilling life. I am genuinely content. Going forward, I strive to maintain this happiness without compromise.
15 years ago, I ended my marriage because I found out my husband was cheating with a childhood friend and even had a child with her. This made me very upset and almost made me quit my job. But during that tough time, my current husband helped me and we made a happy home together. However, my happiness didn't last long. Recently, I saw my ex-husband for the first time in 15 years. He said mean things to me, like I must still be single because nobody would want to marry someone like me who couldn't have kids, but I surprised him by introducing him to my children. When I introduced my son, my ex-husband was shocked and scared. I told him about my life now. I'm Florence, 38 years old. I live with my 13-year-old son Max, my 11-year-old daughter Ava, and my husband David, who is the same age as me. Max is in middle school and going through a rebellious phase. He can be cheeky sometimes, but my husband David knows how to handle him. Ava loves makeup and fashion, and she knows how to get what she wants because she's the youngest and a girl. Max really cares about Ava, so when she jokes about not liking him if he's not nice to me, he quickly apologizes and promises to be good. He's charming and always knows how to make things fun. So, even though my life is busy, it's also full of joy. But there's something people might not know about me. I've been divorced once and am now happily married for the second time. I got divorced because my ex-husband, who I'll call Jack, did something really hurtful. It happened 15 years ago when we were both in college. We were happy together at first, talking about how much we wanted kids and imagining what it would be like to be parents, but even after trying for a while, we didn't get pregnant. Every month, when my period came, it caused tension between us. We tried to figure out why we couldn't have kids, spending a lot of money on treatments, but doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Despite this, my husband started getting frustrated and blaming me for our infertility. He'd say things like, "When will I ever become a father?" and make sarcastic comments that made me feel bad. He stopped helping around the house, saying it was my job because I couldn't have kids. He made me feel like our marriage was pointless because I couldn't fulfill my role as a woman. Afterwards, my husband's words got meaner. He'd say things like, "My sister is having her second baby already. Isn't that great? They're on their second, and we haven't even had our first." He'd look at me with a harsh expression, making fun of me and putting me down. He'd say, "If your body was normal, we'd have kids by now." I tried to defend myself, saying we didn't know the reason for our infertility yet, but he'd just say, "It's always the woman's fault for not having babies. If I knew you couldn't have kids, I wouldn't have married you. You should feel guilty." His words hurt me a lot. On top of that, my in-laws would call, excitedly asking when they get a grandchild. At first, I tried to brush it off, saying it takes time, but it didn't help. My mother-in-law started blaming me, saying I was useless for not having kids yet, especially since my sister-in-law had kids so easily. The pressure from them was overwhelming. One day, my friend Daisy invited me out. Jack, my ex-husband, had been busy with work, so he wasn't around much. That's when Daisy told me something shocking. She said, "I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I have something important to tell you, Florence. I've missed you too." "What's up, Daisy?" "Remember Grace? She was Jack's childhood friend. They grew up near each other and their families were close. She went to the same college as us and now works with me. Grace, the daughter of the CEO at my job, got her position through family connections. We didn't really hang out in college since we were in different groups, and even at work, we didn't talk much because we worked in different departments. My husband introduced me to her once, calling her his friend and asking me to get along with her. But Grace didn't seem to like me, so I avoided her. Daisy, my friend, told me something surprising about Grace. She said, "I think your husband and Grace are having an affair." I couldn't believe it. Daisy had seen them holding hands, not just like friends. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I think you should find out more," Daisy said, offering to help me talk about it. I had suspected Jack was cheating. He'd always come home late, saying he had to work more. He was never around on weekends, busy entertaining clients. Even though I had a feeling, I tried to ignore it. But after hearing Daisy's warning, I went straight to a detective agency. I wanted proof of his infidelity. Within a week, they had enough evidence. But I wasn't ready to divorce him yet. Despite everything, I still remembered the promises we made to each other. I needed time to decide. A few days later, I got home to find Jack sitting at the dinner table, which was unusual because he usually came home late. "Oh, you're home. I thought you'd be late again," I said sarcastically. "Yeah, sorry about that. I need to talk to you," he replied. Knowing about the affair, I braced myself for bad news. "I want a divorce," he said. "What?" I was shocked. I realized he wasn't just fooling around, he was serious about Grace. "Grace is pregnant. I'm going to marry her," he added. I couldn't believe it. He had always said Grace was just a friend. Jack didn't seem to think he did anything wrong. He even said, "My mom wants me to divorce you. She thinks Grace is better because she's prettier and can have kids." Hearing this hurt a lot. Tears filled my eyes as Jack left, saying he was going back to Grace. I was too hurt to stop him. Later, I got divorce papers in the mail, with a note from Grace asking me to divorce Jack. It felt like a slap in the face. I wanted to say, "No, you're the one who took my husband." But I realized arguing wouldn't change anything. I was left with so many questions. Why was I being blamed? I couldn't just accept the divorce quietly. Determined to stand up for myself, I used the evidence I gathered from the detective agency to start divorce mediation. A few days after filing, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard Grace, Jack's mistress, yelling at me. She was furious that I had started a lawsuit. I calmly explained that it was the right thing to do given the situation and that I knew about her inappropriate behavior. She demanded compensation, even though she was pregnant. Her harsh words hurt me deeply. I told her we could discuss everything officially during the divorce mediation. In the mediation, the court recognized Jack and Lee's relationship as infidelity based on the evidence. Jack tried to blame my infertility. The court didn't buy it because there was no proof of my infertility within just a year of marriage. In the end, I received $220,000 as alimony from Jack and $110,000 from Grace. After finalizing the divorce, I hoped to move on, but the aftermath was far from over. The affair between Jack, Grace, and me became gossip among our friends, especially since we all went to the same university. Shockingly, some rumors suggested I hid my infertility and tricked Jack into marrying me. Some friends even sympathized with Jack and Grace, which felt awful. The situation got worse at work because Lee, Grace's father, was my company's president. Grace portrayed herself as a victim, spreading lies about me hiding my infertility and demanding alimony while she was pregnant. Despite trying to ignore it, I faced backlash at work. My bosses favored Grace because of her influential family, and I was sidelined from important projects. Eventually, I felt forced to resign. While job hunting, another company recognized my skills and offered me a position. Here, I thrived beyond expectations. My new boss valued me for my abilities, unlike my previous workplace, which favored nepotism. I found myself drawn to this boss, who turned out to be my current husband, David. David was my rock during the tough times after my breakup with Jack. We spent a lot of time together, talking about everything from work to personal matters, and our bond grew into love. When David proposed, I was thrilled, but I was also scared of facing infertility again. I confessed this fear to him, and he reassured me, saying that he loved me no matter what and that having children wasn't the most important thing to him. Feeling truly happy and loved, I decided to marry David. Shortly after our wedding, we were blessed with our first child, Max, followed by our daughter, Aha. Despite the challenges of parenting, we were content and happy every day. Years later, at a friend's wedding, I unexpectedly saw my ex-husband for the first time in 15 years. I was startled to see him there, but then I remembered that the bride and groom were also our university friends, so it wasn't surprising that he was there too. I tried to ignore him as I walked by, but he called out to me loudly, catching my attention. "Hey, what's up?" Jack said loudly, possibly drunk, as he spoke to me. "Surprised to see you here, it's been a while. Looks like you've put on some weight, huh?" he added, spraying a bit as he talked. I silently rolled my eyes at his sarcastic comment. Then Jack called over his family, including Grace and her son. Grace laughed when she saw me and joked, "Wow, it's been ages. Have you been stress eating? You've gained some weight, huh? Life's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? And still no luck with having kids, right? Tough luck, huh?" Their rude comments left me speechless with shock. Then I noticed Grace's son blushing and looking down with embarrassment. He was quite handsome. I realized I hadn't introduced him yet. "This is my son," Grace proudly announced. "He's cute, right? Takes after me. And he's not just good looking, he's really smart too, a little genius." "Looks like we're the only ones happy here, huh?" Jack and Grace laughed, proudly showing off their son. But I noticed something off about their son's expression. He seemed uncomfortable with his parents' behavior, growing increasingly dissatisfied with their mocking attitude. He must be a kind-hearted child, I thought to myself. But I didn't have time for them. Just as I was about to leave, Jack grabbed my arm tightly. "You divorced me because of infertility, yet you took money from us," he said, still holding on to a grudge from 15 years ago. Then Grace chimed in, "Yeah, you're infertile and single. Why do you need money? Families like us with children need it more. Give us back double the money you took." Their selfishness stunned me. Suddenly, Jack's son spoke up, pointing out, "Single means unmarried, right? But she's wearing a wedding ring on her left hand." Everyone's attention turned to my left hand, where I wore a wedding ring. Jack and Grace stared in shock. "You're married?" they exclaimed loudly, causing a scene. Feeling embarrassed by the scene Jack and Grace caused, I was unsure what to do. Suddenly, my son Max and daughter Ava appeared, concerned about my lateness. Ava, always outspoken, was joined by Max, who rarely spoke up so boldly. "Mom, you're late, and you have kids?" Max asked, surprising me with his directness. "Yes, I do. Let me introduce them. This is my son Max and my daughter Ava." Jack and Grace were shocked to see the children of the woman they thought couldn't have kids. Grace looked closely at my son, and after a moment, they began to speak in a more mature tone, though their voices sounded strained. They seemed curious about Max's uniform. "He came straight from school with my husband, so he's still in his uniform. And yes, he goes to that famous private middle school," I explained. "Max worked hard and wanted to try for it, so we let him take the exam. He passed and has been attending since this year." Indeed, Max excelled academically and was enrolled in a prestigious local school. "No way, he can't be your son," my daughter exclaimed, joining the conversation. "She plans to take the same school's exam next year," I added proudly. "Yeah, and Max is amazing. He won a violin contest," Ava chimed in. "Violin? I thought I recognized him. He was on TV recently," Grace exclaimed. "Oh, you saw that?" "Yes, he's been getting quite a bit of media attention lately. He was coming back from violin practice today," I explained. Grace and my ex-husband were speechless. "You were supposed to be infertile. How could you have children like this?" Jack protested. We're all happy now, and that's what matters. Let's not involve each other anymore, I said firmly, ready to leave with my kids. Just then, my husband David arrived. Jack's face went pale at the sight of him. Is your husband by any chance the young Mr. Lopes who became the president of Resident last year? Jack asked, recognizing David. Indeed, David was the president of a company that had ties with Grace's father's firm. I had switched jobs and met David there. Last year, he was appointed as the president of the company, recommended by the then president. Ah, I'm Lopez. My husband introduced himself, confused by the tense atmosphere. Sensing the tension, Max explained. We heard these people calling Mom infertile and fat. So, Ava and I came to help her out. I realized they must have overheard my ex-husband and his wife insulting me earlier. My husband's expression hardened as he realized the situation. I heard rumors, but I didn't expect a lack of decency, he said firmly. Jack started making excuses, trying to flatter my husband, while Grace protested. They began arguing, and their son, who had been silent, finally spoke up. Let's stop this already. It's terrible how you're talking about this lady, calling her fat and infertile, and demanding money back. It's embarrassing for me, he said tearfully. And what's this about an affair? Am I a child born from an affair? Am I an unwanted child? He continued, his voice full of anguish. Jack and Grace became visibly unsettled. Oh well, it's not like that. Grace tried to defend herself, but she couldn't ignore the stares from the other guests. Blushing deeply, she looked down in embarrassment. Though I couldn't forgive Jack and Grace, I admired their son for his sense of justice and kindness. Wanting to support him, I was about to speak, but my husband spoke up first. Thank you for standing up for my wife and defending her from insults. You're a kind child, my husband said, patting the boy's head. With a smile, I decided to speak up too. But maybe I am a bit chubby. However, that's not the point. Actually, I'm pregnant, I announced, gently stroking my belly. I was already pregnant with our third child. At that time, I was on maternity leave. Turning to the tear-filled eyes of the boy, I continued, your mom also nurtured you in her belly with great care. You're not an unwanted child. Your mom and dad love you and are proud of you, right? Looking at Jack and Grace, I waited for their response. The boy looked at them hopefully and asked, really? Jack and Grace quickly nodded, assuring him, yes, yes. You're our pride. You're very important to us. Seeing the boy smile, I felt a sense of relief. Let's get back to our seats for now. It's a day of celebration, I suggested. Each family returned to their seats, and the chaotic scene came to an end. The wedding concluded successfully, and as we headed to the station, Grace and Jack approached us with their son, holding hands. Max and Ava had been protective of me, but my husband chuckled and calmed them down. Grace and Jack offered their apologies. Sorry about everything. We truly regret our actions today. Thank you for earlier, they said. It was the first apology I had received from them in 15 years. Perhaps having a child had changed them a bit. I just laughed and said, really? After all this time? With that, I turned my back on them and began to walk away. Max offered to carry my bags, taking the one marked with maternity. Ava cheerfully dragged a coat over my shoulders. Despite their young age, they were looking out for me during my pregnancy. All right, tonight's dinner will be Dad's homemade hamburgers, Max and Ava's favorite. Thank you. I vowed to protect the smiles of my beloved family, leaving behind the pains of the past.